Hi, I'm Tyson Franklin, and welcome to this week's episode of Podiatry Marketing. With me, as usual, is my good friend, Big Jim Mack. So, Jimmy boy, how you doing today?
Tyson, I'm doing well. I've got another kid with a broken wrist, but besides that, I can't complain about much.
The name Jim, there's so many variations and way that you can use it.
I think we might have talked about it previously. I think I've had about 6 or 7 different iterations, whether it's my given name James or Jimmy, Jimmy Mac, Jimmer, Jimbo. There's no shortage of different ways to chop that up.
Yeah, very versatile. Better than Richard, I think.
For sure. I totally agree.
Because there's a few versions of Richard. Yeah, you can have Richard,
Right.
then you have Rick, but then somebody else will go with Dick as a
Or
preference.
Rich. Yeah.
Or Rich. Yeah, there's a few variations there as well.
Rich or Richie.
Yeah, okay. Now, Richard's probably versatile as well.
Yeah.
Okay, what are we talking about today other than my name's actually pretty simple. So what are we talking about today?
Well, Ty, today we're going to talk about
Slim?
the basics of local SEO and kind of what that means. I think we've talked a lot about different types of just kind of maybe general SEO in the past, and we've talked
Yeah.
about some of these concepts, but I think just to kind of like get back to basics and kind of inform people about the way that search is changing and just the importance of number one, what is local SEO, and then some kind of practical tips about ways they can implement it, in their clinic themselves or to market their practice or talking to your marketer and kind of being on the same wavelength as them to make sure that you understand the kind of direction they're trying to head and why this local SEO is a big deal.
Okay, so the big question is, what is local SEO and why does it matter?
Well, the quick definition is that it's basically online visibility for your clinic when people are searching locally. I think we've talked about it in a previous podcast, but some marketing things, maybe you see Pepsi or Taco Bell or McDonald's or Burger King, that's trying to go after kind of you see commercials or you hear announcements on the radio, or you see stuff online, but that's trying to go for like a very large market. And the kind of tactics they will use in marketing is not necessarily something that should be implemented with your clinic. First and foremost, your clinic is a local business. So the real game of marketing or the real, you know, objective of your marketing is how can you get in front of those local patients and be an option for them. When they think about a podiatrist, how can you be at the top of the list when they're thinking about people, even if maybe they're not your patient yet?
Yeah.
How can you get that awareness? And you have to kind of approach that from a local business perspective as opposed to seeing what all these, multinational major corporations are doing with their marketing. You need to kind of have a local first approach to your marketing.
Yeah, I suppose because you could have McDonald's and they might be shooting the ad in an area that has snow and you never have snow in your area. And it's sort of irrelevant because you just go, okay, that was shot in a snowy area. But I know I have a McDonald's. Whereas if you were, a podiatrist, you've got to really use what's happening in your area.
Absolutely. Whether it be online or just kind of in your regular marketing, you just want to make sure you're connecting with those patients and showing that you understand what's going on in the local area. Like we talked about previously, things like, sponsorships are ways of local marketing, along with, online ads that are targeted for very specific areas, building, things like areas we serve pages, which we might get into here in a little bit. But there's just ways to really kind of be more focused on that local market. Things like Google Business Profile come
Mm.
to mind as well. Really being on top of the kind of these near me searches. So podiatrist near me, or, if I was based in St. Louis, Missouri, how can I rank number one for St. Louis podiatrist? These are things that are going to actually drive patients to your practice. More general marketing tactics or trying to appeal to everybody is going to make you kind of invisible to everybody. So it's one of those things where you want to really kind of find that way to make sure you're getting in front of your local audience. And there's some ways we'll kind of go over that.
So with the Google Business Profile, though, if you're using local images, for example,
Mhm.
putting it in the Google Business Profile, making comments on it, in and around your area, that would have to be beneficial as well.
Yeah, definitely mentioning, like I think we might have talked in the past, but if your local area has like a marathon, it's like the St.
Yeah.
Louis Marathon and something, and you're, putting imagery on your Google posts or maybe writing blog posts about that. When people, want to know like who treats, patients with after the marathon, if they've hurt their ankle or hurt their foot or something, it's a way for you to rank for terms like that. So that's really, really important. But I think when it comes down to it, I've worked with some clinics that have massive amounts of traffic, whatever blog post they're writing about generalized topics do really, really well. But when it comes down to it, what everybody is looking for is those different types of marketing tactics that are actually going to drive patient appointments and bookings. So while it's great to have, a lot of people coming to your website and maybe a few of those are going to convert, you'd rather have a smaller number that are very relevant and kind of near where you have clinic locations so that you're kind of getting the most bang for your buck. So trying to find that way of getting relevant local traffic is kind of what we're looking for.
Yeah, and bottom line, that's what it's all about. You're better to have 100 people locally contacting you than 10,000 people from another country
Absolutely.
seeing
So yeah,
something they've written, because they're not going to come into your clinic. You want bums and seats.
no, exactly. You want that local SEO traction. You don't want national or regional. Maybe some people would like to go for that, but I'd say the majority of podiatry clinics in the US, Canada, and abroad, that local traffic is what you're looking for.
Yeah, unless you're selling a product, I suppose.
Yeah, if you're selling a product or you're trying to really make yourself seen like on the national scene as the best place in Australia or the US to get a specific type of procedure done. I've seen some clinics that have done that, but you're going to spend a lot of money because you're not only focusing your marketing spend kind of in that 20 miles or 30 miles around your clinic, you're trying to hit other areas of the nation and trying to get people to come to you from a nearby state or maybe from across the country. And when you have countries as big as Canada and the US, that could be a pretty pricey endeavor.
Yeah, and Australia, and there's not a lot in between.
No, for sure.
There's a lot of nothing. So what's next?
So next is like, now that you kind of know what it is, and maybe you're doing some of this yourself or maybe working with a marketing partner, how can you measure and kind of know that you're getting traction with local SEO or some of the tactics you're doing? Like we talked about, sometimes having a built out Google business profile page for your clinic, for your individual providers, that's a way of doing it. But how can you really know if it's working or if it's, increasing with these efforts you're putting into it, whether you're doing it yourself, someone on your team, or you're spending money to pay someone to do it? The most simple way initially is that inside of Google Business Profile, there is kind of an analytics tab. So you can kind of look and see how many clicks are going on your Google Business Profiles, how many calls are being generated from there, how many directions. So there's a few kind of basic metrics that let you look up from the last 6 months on this kind of Google Business Profile
And
dashboard.
usually they'll email that to you as well. I
Yep.
still get one once a month from an old shoe store that we used to own. I still get to see their stats, and even the own stuff that I do on my own website.
Yeah, so it's just that's a great way of just kind of initially kind of getting a general sense of what's happening there. I don't think it's, like I said, it's usually goes back 6 months. So if you have those emails, maybe in Chat GPT, you could throw create PDFs of the last 2 years or something. You kind of make some graphs and some trends by uploading those PDFs somewhere. But for most people, they're just going to look at it and kind of get a general sense of where it's going from month to month. If you're a little bit more technically savvy, or maybe you're working with a marketing agency, they might implement tools like what's called Local Falcon. So this tool basically has the way of really helping you kind of narrow down some of these Google searches or these kind of near me searches. So you can see by utilizing Local Falcon, basically it's like kind of little dots on a map. So maybe the central dot is your clinic, and then maybe you try to get a radius of maybe 5 miles or 10 miles around your clinic to see where you're ranking if somewhere to search on their mobile phone or on their home laptop, as far as, where do you rank? Because obviously you're going to rank best in the locations closest to where your clinic is at.
Yeah,
But,
it makes sense.
but knowing kind of like, do you have reach somewhere else, or have you built out some local pages somewhere which allows you to reach out somewhere else in a nearby suburb or a local neighborhood? Maybe you have multiple clinics, so you have more physical presence there, but it's a way for you to determine, how some of these local marketing efforts are working. And it's kind of what they call a geo grid. I'm not sure if you've seen those before, Tyson, but it's kind of like, maybe it's green and that 2 miles around your clinic, and it becomes a little bit more yellow to orange to purple. So it kind of gives you a general sense of what's going on. Like I said, it's much better than, sometimes people will, well, I'm going to be in the town next to me, so I'm going to pull my phone out and I'll check and see where I'm at, right, on my phone. But on Google, maybe do Google search. But the problem with that is that Google is kind of collecting all of your search history, and they kind of know what you've searched for before. So it's kind of a biased search, and you may not get that kind of basic search that someone in that local area or someone that just lives in that area is going to get more often. So it's important that if you by utilizing something like either a White Spark or a local Falcon, it's a way of either you or the marketing provider you're working with to kind of keep track of what's going on kind of a month to month basis, so you can kind of see more trends as far as how that's going. But like I talked about, there's also like Google Analytics and some other ways of determining how things are going locally. When you build out those areas we serve pages, you can see, is there traffic being driven to there through organic traffic or through paid traffic? What is driving traffic to those local pages that you build on your website? So kind of measuring is an important component of this local SEO approach, because if you don't measure, it's tough to really determine, how things are going with that approach.
Definitely measuring. I'm going to talk about measuring next week. But what you can measure and what you should measure, and what you probably don't need to measure.
Absolutely.
So what's the next step? Well, the next thing you should be looking at.
Yeah, so you should be looking at some kind of key factors that influence that local SEO ranking, right? There's going to be some key things that you can do. There's some things you can do about it, and there's other things you can't. There's like, for example, proximity to the searcher. Like most everybody that listens to the podcast probably has a physical location. So if you're in a specific zip code or a specific town, you're obviously going to rank much, much better in there with a good website and Google Business Profile, that kind of presence. It's sometimes a little bit out of your control if you're in a super competitive area with lots of nearby podiatrists, maybe in the town right next to you. If you don't have that zip code, right? There's even some towns that, there's a popular zip code and they're in a different zip code, and it's really tough to rank in that. So, proximity to the searcher, whoever's searching for those services, is really, really important. Also relevance, when people are searching for foot surgeon or bunion surgery or, different types of specialties, it has to tie into both your Google Business Profile and your website content. So you need to be, relevant for the searcher. And if you don't have, maybe you're just one town over from Barrington, but you don't have a page, nothing on your website talks about Barrington, nothing on your Google Business Profile says anything about Barrington. Google is not going to see you as relevant as opposed to someone that has built out a page on the website that says that they treat patients from Barrington. Maybe you won't be number one, but you can still rank in that maybe top 3 or top 5 on occasion.
Okay, so you can be right near a suburb that's quite a popular suburb, but if that suburb is not mentioned and another clinic who may not be as good as you has that mentioned, they're going to pop up more. And these are questions I've had people ask me in the past. Oh, but I've got more reviews. I've got this. Yeah, this other person's ranked higher. And that's probably why, because Google's looking at them going, you're closer to, or the proximity and maybe relevance is better than what they're doing.
No, absolutely. It's kind of a black box like you're talking about in the past with Google. It's not one factor that's going to, either put you at number 1 or put you down at number 5. It's a kind of a combination of things, and the kind of what the formula is and what the weighting and the ranking of these things are is, at least for right now, it's only kind of known to Google, but that might change in the future. The next thing in this kind of factors area is kind of, we would call it prominence. So what kind of reviews do you have? How many reviews do you have? What kind of star are they? Are they thanks doc, like 2 sentences, or are they a
Jim's
paragraph?
good.
Yes, we like the clinic, or great doc, or, these quick little things in a 4-star review, or is it someone that's written keywords in there that will help you rank for the things you want to rank for? So, having reviews, citations from, other blogs, links from other places, sometimes having media coverage linked back to your website. And
I was about to say, you're talking about backlinks and things like that.
Yeah,
from other
backlinks
places
and
as
link
well.
building and stuff can be helpful ways to make your website more prominent.
Yeah, I've noticed that when you see some of the bigger websites, not in podiatry, but sort of companies outside of podiatry, and you read any of their articles on their blogs, the amount of links that they have going to other places is pretty phenomenal, where they link out. But then you'll be on other websites and you'll see how many times there's links back to those companies as well. And it just builds your trust up over a period of time.
No, exactly. That's what Google sees it as. The more links you have from different types of websites, it just builds more trust with them, and then they're willing to show you more in the results. And, another way to build trust is having website authority. If you've had the same domain for 20 years, that's seen as like you're a stable clinic and you haven't been kind of bouncing around or hasn't, been sold by 3 or 4 different people. So maybe it's only 8 years, maybe it's 5 years, but as long as you have a good website, and it's been maintained, that's a way that Google will kind of, show it to people, and a factor that will help you rank better locally. But there's also the technical health of your website. If you have a website that takes 10 seconds to load, even if it's an amazing website, Google's going to ding you for that because it shouldn't load that slowly. And that's a great way for people to want to back out of your website and go to somebody else that has a mobile friendly, quick loading website. So making sure that the technical details and the technical health of the website kind of are up to date, and current, is more and more important these days.
Yeah, just about that backlink thing that you were talking about before too. So if you have a podiatry clinic and you're working with another company, you might be local football team, local basketball team. If they've got a website, you should be talking to the people that are organizing and running that, and talk about actually having backlinks to each other.
Yeah, you can run into like, having agreements with folks, and just being kind of open and honest about that. But like sometimes you just got to be careful about buying links from
Oh
kind of
yeah,
these
yeah. It
kind of
wasn't
like
more. I
black
wasn't
hat.
talking about buying them. It was more that, like when we used to work with the Cairns Taipans, which was the
Right.
local team in the National League, and the guy who was the CEO, we just had a thing that anytime we were writing a basketball article, we would tag the Cairns Taipans,
Sure.
and the Cairns Taipans, whenever they were talking about anything, we'd try and get them to do backlinks back to our clinic. We just found that was like very helpful.
No, it's super helpful. The higher, trust in a kind of domain authority that website has that links to you, it's going to be a huge signal that Google that you're trustworthy. And like I said, yeah, I would like that's totally fine to do that with kind of reputable link trading of links and backlinks in that fashion. But a lot of clinics and a lot of people will be sometimes even, if you're working with specific marketing agencies, it's like, oh, we're going to do some link building for you. You should really ask them how they are doing that link building.
Yeah.
That's one of the kind of strategies we'll get into here, but you definitely don't want them buying links from some random places that have a high authority because someone let a domain expire. Someone went and bought this high domain authority website, and now they're like sending you links from something that's not relevant, but it's a high domain authority. So you're kind of getting some Google juice from it, but those are usually found out. And it's a little bit probably
Oh,
too geeky for this conversation, but definitely
yeah.
stay away from buying links.
I love that Google juice. I could picture that on a shirt. Yeah.
There you
I
go.
run on Google juice. So
Sipping
anyway,
on Google juice.
so are there ways your clinic can, like improve the local search visibility?
Yeah, since once you know the factors, right, then you can kind of go, well, how do I kind of adjust these factors, or what things can I work on, or something I'm working with on my marketing, work on to really try to increase my local search visibility. And first and foremost is making sure that you're optimizing, updating your Google business profile. Like I said, making sure you have a great one for your clinic, one for each of the providers in your practice, having recent photos, making sure that all the services you provide, that all the kind of name, address, contact information is up to date, your hours are up to date. You're basically posting either every week or every 2 weeks on
Yeah.
Google, kind of the Google posts, to let them show that you are active and it's something that you're doing. So that's first and foremost. Also, having a patient review workflow is super important, and then responding to both positive and negative reviews shows Google that you are active and that people are interacting with your clinic and your Google business profile. It helps build trust and helps you rank more locally. And then it's building these like backlinks and local citations, whether it be other health directories, maybe it's other local media, maybe it's with healthcare sites, maybe it's with some of your partners, maybe it's running shoe stores or sports teams like you talked about Tyson. Getting you these kind of high authority, well trusted websites to link to you, is a way to really kind of help bolster that local search visibility.
So basically, what I think people need to understand too, if you've got your website, you've even got the Google business profile, if you just put it there and you just leave it, it doesn't give you any Google juice. Google wants to see that you're an active participant in growing your business and educating the people that may actually need your services.
No, absolutely. They can't be dormant, right? It's not a set it and forget it, kind of situation. I think a lot of people wish that, websites and Google and all these kind of ways of getting local visibility could just be build it and then like let it ride for, 10 or 15 years, then come back to it. But it's not. It's like tending a garden. You have to be constantly doing things
Mm.
on it and adjusting to make sure that not only are you in line with kind of their current regulations that Google puts out, but they're gonna penalize those that don't interact with them, and those that do will benefit. So it's really really important. And last but not least in this little area here is that I talked about it briefly, and we have a full podcast on it. But it's building these areas we serve pages. Maybe you're not located in Barrington or in St. Louis, but if you're nearby and you have a page where you show that you're a podiatrist that treats patients from that location, it's going to help you rank locally. I call these, like I said, areas we serve pages.
Yeah.
They're really simple to make. There's a kind of a template that I have. You can, if you email us, I can show you kind of how to make these, but it's a great way to drive relevant local traffic to your website. And it can really bolster that traffic that's coming in there with patients that would actually book, as opposed to some of the content you make will just be some person from Taiwan that's never going to come visit your clinic. So you just want to make sure that the time and effort you're putting in things, or the money you're putting into things, that it's potentially going to turn into more business for your practice.
Yeah, and they always say, like, and I think it depends too where you are. Like in Cairns, for example, it's 150,000 people. It's pretty easy to get around. It's Cairns. Yeah, you just put Cairns. Everything is Cairns. But if you're in a capital city like Brisbane, there's 2, or Sydney, there's 4 million people down there.
Yeah.
And they always say, because the average person changes address or locations every 7 years. So you get someone who moves into a town or a city where there's 4 million people, and they're looking for a podiatrist in their area, and they don't really know the other areas around there. You could be just around the corner, but you're in a different suburb, and they may even drive past you and go somewhere else purely because you didn't pop up in a search.
No, absolutely. It's just one of those things you have to be proactive about. It's not just gonna happen, and yeah, you just have to kind of do that.
Okay, so have you got any action steps that everybody should be doing now, this month?
Yeah. So to kind of wrap things up, I think these are simple things that anyone that's in practice can do now, and just kind of at least learn a little bit about local SEO. So, like I said, you can either do it yourself, or you can kind of work with your podiatry marketing, a person to try to implement these things. And first and foremost is, or work with me. Exactly. So
You don't work with me.
No, not Tyson for sure. He'll tell you about it, but he's not going to do it for you. So.
No, I'm not going to do it.
So first and foremost is to audit your clinic's Google business profile. Maybe look at your own. Maybe you have a colleague at your clinic, but just take a look at what you currently have there. Do the photos are the photos current? Do they kind of show the kind of professional image you want to have for your clinic? Because like we talked about previously, not everybody these days is going to your website. So you want to make sure that your Google business profile is super professional, that really kind of talks to your ideal patient. So first and foremost, are you doing that? And if not, change those things. Just be a little bit more active on Google business profile, super helpful. Then, look at your Google's business profile analytics. I think it's important to see, what has the trend been over the last 6 months as far as number of phone calls from your profile? Is there people more clicking through? Are people looking for directions? What does that trend line look? Is it flat? Is it going down? Is it going up? If you're a little bit more geeky, you can look into different software packages like Local Falcon or White Spark that have that kind of local SEO ways of looking in your local area. But I would probably hold off on that unless you're just really really into marketing.
Yeah.
Also, I kind of identified 5 different either websites or local citation providers. That maybe it's a clinic you work with, someone that you can maybe exchange links with on your website, or maybe you're already doing it. You could let them know that you featured them on a recent blog post or on one of your social channels, to kind of help them. It's sometimes one thing to kind of toot your own horn and kind of talk about yourself all the time, but when you give other people in your local community, whether it be a partner or an organization, a little bit of love and a link, they're probably more than willing to return that to you. So that's an important component. If you're not getting patient reviews right now, I'm happy to kind of help you work through a workflow to kind of make that happen with you and your staff. It's gold. If you just think about yourself. If you're looking for a dentist or some type of provider, and there's someone that has 6 reviews and they're 3.6 stars, or there's someone that has 720 and they're 4.7, like who are you going to go see for that? So just think about your own experiences. But if someone's receiving excellent care, don't be shy. They're going to be more than willing to kind of help you if you ask them. But you do have to ask permission and do that. And then, create a hyper local blog post or service page, whether it be a town or suburb near you. Work with someone that builds your website to build that areas we serve page so you can get more traffic from that location. But these are just simple things. Local SEO is super, super important. Like we talked about, that's, getting in front of those local patients and being visible, both whether it be online or with your offline marketing, is huge. So, don't, like I said, don't try to get caught up in like what other people appear to be doing or what other major multinational companies are doing, not in the podiatry or not in the medical marketing sphere. You could learn a lot from dentists. Look at what chiropractors are doing in your local area. Maybe look at other podiatry clinics, but you don't need to be emulating, Pepsi or Coca-Cola or those folks. I mean, you can learn from them, but your tactics and the way you get in front of your local patients is definitely different.
Yeah, and getting on, just the last thing I want to say about the reviews as well. I always said, if you give reviews, you get reviews, because it becomes top of mind. And I did a barbecue cooking class recently. And with that, I shot this little 8-second video as he was squeezing lime on the prawn and chorizo skewer. It was an 8-second video. I just threw it on YouTube just with a little bit of music from Yellow, that, oh yeah, as he squeezed it on there. In the first 24 hours, I had almost 7,000 views on YouTube. And what was funny is the owners of the barbecue store at the beginning of the day when they were doing the cooking class said, we really thrive on reviews and social media. So if you want to take photos, if you want to post them, they were just encouraging us to do it. And they said, is there anyone here in witness protection? Because we're going to take some photos, and we have a big laugh about it. And the more we drank, the funnier it got. But by me posting those pictures, probably about 5 guys from the Muay Thai gym I go to want to go to the next one. They said, we should go as a group. And because I'm doing that, it keeps it top of mind with me that I do that for other people. Therefore, I talk about it a lot more, which means when I'm talking to somebody like we're talking now, if people are enjoying our podcast, feel free to leave a review.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So that's what I want to say. You just got to, I think you need to give to receive as well.
100%.
And I love promoting other businesses that I feel are doing the right thing, doing something unique. And I think our patients would be exactly the same.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I think it's one of those things where the more you give, the more you get in a way. So,
well, you make some quirky little things that we do in our clinic sometimes that patients don't. We would have been doing something and you would have had a patient say, oh, that's really interesting how you did that. Now, if you said to a patient, did you find that interesting? Yeah. Do you want to film me doing the next one? And they feel free to post that online. That's some quirky little thing you saw me do at such and such XYZ Podiatry.
Exactly.
Yeah. If people have been listening to the episodes, they'll understand the reference at XYZ Podiatry.
We got to fit that into every episode somehow.
I know. Anything you want to add before we wrap up?
No, I think that I kind of went over it. So like if anybody has any questions about, needs coaching or, some guidance along the way, Tyson is definitely there to help you out with that. And if you need implementation of some of these different strategies that we talked about today, or you just want some ideas, definitely don't hesitate to reach out to us.
Yeah. I've realized something that I mentioned to a client only today, and we were talking about business coaching. And I said to him, I'm not really a business coach. I'm more of a business teacher. Because if there's a specific area in your clinic that you're not quite sure how to do it, whether it's setting up a system or doing something with patients, I said, I can teach you that really, really easy. And some people, that's all they need. They don't need a coach. They just need to be taught a couple of basics.
Yeah, exactly. It's great to have someone on your side that can help guide you through those situations.
More on that soon. Okay.
All right.
I look forward to talking to you next week, Jim. See ya.
Bye now.
Okay, bye.